knock on her door, and I say, Sue, got some barbecue for you. And she say, thank you, Tuffy, and she take it. So I did that a few more times, and one day I knocked on her door, and I said, Miss Brown, I got some barbecue for you. And she goes, you know what, Tuffy, thanks, but I still got some of the last barbecue you made. And it struck me, my barbecue wasn't any good.
Welcome to the Pitmasters podcast. I'm Rusty Monson.
I'm Anthony Lujan.
And on this episode, we're talking to the great Tuffy Stone, owner of several restaurants, obviously a legend in the barbecue world, competition and otherwise. And we pick his brain on all sorts of things. So let's go. So we're trying something interesting this time. We're doing a little far away recording. Because Anthony, so Anthony is not with us in studio today.
No, I'm not. We're trying something new today, see if it works out.
Yep. So he can be wherever he wants and record with us.
Yeah.
Technology, science.
Sir. Yeah.
All the things.
Yeah.
So, guys, you, as usual, you can find us on all the social media platforms at the Pitmasters Podcast. You can also find us at pitmasterspodcast.com, where you can listen to all of our episodes right there. And you can follow us on YouTube and pretty much anywhere you can listen to a podcast. So check us out. So, man, what'd you do this week?
Not a whole lot. Just did some SEA practices with my boy. I pretty much gave him the knife and said, get to town. Threw down on the grill and he hammered it out. We cooked up 3 steaks and his won. Five of us decided on his unanimously.
Really?
It was crazy. Yeah.
They looked good, like cooked.
Oh man, that was the downside. His was actually just a hair undercooked, but it still turned out amazing.
Thanks. Yeah, I just cooked some today, getting ready, and it was hard.
Yeah, so I don't know if you noticed on social media, but that guy Matt Hansen from Crooked Pigs was giving me a hard time about the squares versus diamonds on my.
See, that's the thing, man. Listen, Matt, I know you're listening, dude. Diamonds are so passé. It's like 1980s, all right? Squares is the new hotness. It's the TikTok of now. It's the TikTok of steak. It's the Billie Eilish of whatever her name is of steak. All right, Matt? It's the new hotness.
Get that.
Yeah.
Get that.
Get that. Yeah, I cooked a couple and it was really hard because like I said before, I have that tier of, you make one, it's super good. That's the winner. And then I make that when I make others to see if it beats it. I made 3 and the 2 beat it out. And it was so hard to decide, but 1 inched out. So we'll try again. But they were good. It was good. It was awesome. It worked out great.
Well, let's try this out. Maybe this weekend or something. I'll have my son cook against you and see how it turns out.
Bring it. That actually be cool.
That way we can that way we can kind of figure it out and just see, it helps us out too, it helps you out.
Yeah, for sure. I'm totally down for that. I'm gonna give sausage a try again because the last one sucked. But a guy named Derek Kimball sent me a recipe, so I'm really excited to try it. It looks super good. He's part of the ham barbecue competition team. That was really nice of him. I thank you, man. That was really cool. So it looks really awesome. I'm going to do it again so I can raise my head high and look at people in the eyes when I'm walking anywhere, in the grocery store, the gas station, anywhere.
Nice. So I have a question about sausage. Since I don't do the auxiliaries like you do, I'm obviously going to jump into them. But when you cook sausage, I see people making like these huge logs, or sometimes they're smaller. Like, what's the breakdown on that?
Well, you do a lot of like sausage without casings. That's kind of the thing to do because you can really manipulate it. If I do a sausage with a casing, I just basically have to make what I have, in the casing, and that's hard. So if I wanted to do cheese in there, that's fine. But if I wanted jalapenos, you can put a couple things in there. But if you want to get crazy, it's harder. So what you'll do is you'll just take. I do a lot of Italian sausage, and I'll just wrap it in all sorts of things. Jalapeno stuff. Cream cheese, different cheeses, seasoning, sauces. And then I can barbecue sauce on the outside too, which you can't really do. Guess you could, but it'd be weird on a casing sausage. And then I also put some seasoning on the outside of it. So it's easier to not do the casing part of it. So I don't know if I'll submit a sausage with casing in any kind of ancillary. That's just for me at home because I freaking love sausage. So.
Right. So it's pretty much you're more or less links than anything.
Yeah. And it just gives you a lot more freedom. You know, you can wrap it with whatever you want and use different sausage types, you know, and mix and match and all sorts of things. So
heck yeah.
That's usually what you see. But yeah, other than that, man, just getting signed up for the NBBQ Association. So we are, we submitted our podcast for our award for that, which I don't think we'll even, who knows, but that's not why I'm going. I just want to go because it's a really cool event. So if you're anywhere near Louisville, sign up for the NBBQA, which is the National Barbecue and Grilling Association, and go to that. It's really cool. A lot of classes, a lot of people talking, a lot of mingling, a lot of free, cool food. So I'm heading to that. So got to get signed up actually today.
Right. That's a 3-day event too. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Yeah, I got a lot going on in travels. But yeah, let's just get on with it, man. Let's talk. We sat down with Tuffy Stone, which was for me, and I'm sure you, extremely cool. I mean,
yes, it was.
It was like sitting down with Michael Jordan a little bit, in our world. So, so let's just stop jabbing and get to it because it's a really good interview. So enjoy, guys.
Alrighty, guys, we have the 6-time world barbecue champion with us today, Tuffy Stone. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate y'all having me on your show. It's very nice of you.
Yeah, it was fun to get a hold of you. It took a little bit of dancing around. Took us a little while to get you, but we got you.
An old friend of mine used to say, if you want to get something done, ask somebody who's busy to do it. But I think all three of us are so busy. It's like trying to get a day to work for everybody. It just becomes a challenge.
Right.
Yeah. Opening up a new restaurant. Yeah. I just want to understand is extremely, as I've said, I've done that before. So you're opening up a new restaurant right now. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I'm actually in here right now as we're talking. And so if you hear a nail gun go off occasionally, I got my buddy Jeff Hayes in here putting some wainscoting up for me. But me and a really good chef friend of mine, we've worked together on and off for over 20 years, Josh Loeb. He and I and my wife, we got this place. It's not far from my house, and it's called the Westover. When we got it, it was called Westover Station. And it's a cool spot. It was originally a hardware store. The room I'm in right now has 17-foot ceilings. It's just kind of, it went from, a coffee roastery to a coffee shop with some pastries to eventually lunch. And then they got some beer and wine. And the owner that started it, he's a chemical engineer, and he didn't want to do it anymore. And a friend of mine brought the opportunity to my attention, and so we met with him. And we haven't closed, so we've been transitioning from Westover Station to the Westover slowly. It's been kicking our butts. We were working like soldiers, from being in the industry, how hard it is. I've been working lots and lots of 12-hour days. I've been on the line. I've been in the weeds on the line, which has been a while since I've been in the weeds on the line, but it's been really refreshing. I didn't know how to make donuts before we got this place. I now know how to make donuts, and it's got huge potential. It's not a barbecue place. It's, although I had the smoker out yesterday and had my Jambo out, I had the grill vet out, and I smoked up some loin back ribs. I did it really simple. I did it with just some salt, some black pepper, a little granulated garlic, and then Pat Burke, who's a really good friend of mine, he gave me a mop recipe, which I actually put in my cookbook, but it's Worcestershire and vinegar and salt and black pepper. It was actually, I used black pepper yesterday, but his recipe's got white pepper in it and hot sauce and butter. And I didn't wrap the ribs at all. But anyways, people were coming by and smelling them, and I ended up just giving out ribs as treats to everybody. So everybody was in here, having a sandwich or, a latte or whatever it was they were having. And I was walking around giving out ribs. So that was fun. And you guys know how everybody enjoys the smell of barbecue. So it was driving everybody crazy, just, smelling it. But it's not a barbecue place. It's very casual food. We've got things like, bologna sandwich on the menu and, just different assorted sandwiches, some good salads, a couple bowls, and some nice desserts. And we're working towards, we got a lot of egg dishes, so a lot of breakfast. So egg sandwiches and omelets and French toast and those kind of things. And then it's in a great location. And so once we kind of populate the breakfast and the lunch a little more, we will dip our toes into the dinner. But that's kind of what's happening.
Wow.
Sorry for this noise. It's okay, Jeff.
Perfect.
They said they can edit it out. That's the compressor for the nail gun.
Right on. Yeah, I saw a meme. It's funny. It's like, I just worked 40 hours, and it says, I remember my first part-time job. And that's restaurant people would get that.
Yeah.
So you actually you got yourself started as an actually trained chef, as a trained French chef. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I moved to Richmond, Virginia. I'd been in the Marine Corps for 4 years, and I moved here to go to college at Virginia Commonwealth University. And I was going to school, and I needed to make spending money while I was going to school. And so I started off in the front of the house, and I got a job in a restaurant. I was working in the front of the house, and I had a roommate, and we loved to cook. And I've always liked to cook, even when I was younger. And so we had a modest collection of cookbooks, and we were, cooking in the apartment. And my grandmother had given me some sourdough starter, and I started making sourdough bread a few times a week. And I was really enjoying this process of cooking. And I thought about it one day, and I thought, why don't I learn how to cook while I'm going to college and work in the kitchen versus, in the front of the house? So I researched all the chefs in Richmond, and I made a prioritized list of which chef would be the best, in my opinion, to work under. And based on my results, at the top of the list was a French guy named Alain Vincent. And Alain had been at like 2 or 3 Michelin 3-star restaurants in France. He had been the daytime sous chef at a legendary French restaurant in New York called Lutèce. And he had been the chef for Jacques Cousteau on the Calypso. And he had a smaller restaurant called La Maisonette. It was 55 seats. And so I made an appointment to meet with him. And so when I went there, it was kind of like he worked while he interviewed me, and it was he and a sous chef, and they were in their chef jackets with their toques on. And one of them was filleting a whole salmon, and chef was turning potatoes. And he sat there and listened to me, and basically I explained that I wanted to apprentice under him. And this kitchen was just impeccable. It was so clean, and he had a French flat top, and he had stocks simmering and sauces going, and he said he would give me a call, but I left there feeling like he's not going to call me. And so I went home, and I couldn't sleep. I thought about it. I thought that's the kitchen to learn how to work in. So next morning I knocked on his door, and I said, Chef, I tell you what, on Wednesdays and Saturdays from 8 in the morning till noon, I'll work for free, and I'll do whatever you want. I'll wash dishes, clean lettuce, whatever you want. I didn't think he'd say no. Well, he didn't say no. Well, I ended up working my way up from a free prep cook to eventually became his sous chef, and he gave me part ownership in the restaurant. And I worked my ass off for him, and he taught me so much. And then what's amazing is he ended up working in my catering company for 10 years, and he lives about 4 blocks from where I live now. Again, pardon the nails, but this is a working interview.
Yeah, there you go. It's all good.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's cool. That's how you do it. A lot of people, if you're ever out there and you're wondering how you want to work in a restaurant, even with the competition barbecue team, man, sometimes you just got to scrub some dishes. And
exactly.
You can learn so much that way. Just like you said, turning potatoes, like no one wants to do that.
Right.
So just learning that technique is something, and so then you went off and did a catering thing. Where did the barbecue come in from that? And how was that, like moving from being a trained French style chef to moving into barbecue, which is traditionally more of a, sloppy, more of a sloppy food?
So I met my wife, Leslie, and we got married, and eventually we started catering company that focused on high-end food called A Sharper Palate, and we started that in 1993. And so this year we're going to be 27 years old. We're one of the largest catering companies here in Richmond, and as we grew, I found myself managing a team and managing the company, but not cooking anymore. And so it was in 2004, I was really feeling disconnected from my passion of being a chef and being a cook, because there was so much managing that I was having to do. And I just felt this need to reconnect with cooking, to come up with to find a new culinary and, activity that would kind of re-engage me as a cook. I'd learned how to make, chocolates and sushi and, all these hard to pronounce, expensive foods. But for some reason in my mind, I knew I wanted to learn how to cook with fire. And I knew that I wanted to learn how to make barbecue. And I can't tell you why I knew that. It was something that I was compelled to try. So I started doing all this research, and this is a long time ago. This is 16 years ago, and there was not, we didn't have Facebook. It was there wasn't a lot of information out there, and so anyways, there was this barbecue forum that I learned of, and I started getting a little bit of information and asking questions on this forum, and I ended up buying a offset reverse flow smoker that got delivered to me. It was a Lang smoker, and I got a load of hickory, and I got some pork butts, and I made a rub, and I seasoned these pork butts, and I built a fire, and I put the meat. Here we go. Wait a minute. Wait for it. He's going to do another
nail
maybe
gun.
Not. and nail gun. I know, right? And that could be the new, if I cuss, will you just dub in the nail gun going off to beef it out. But anyways, and I put all this meat in this cooker, and I ruined a big old load of meat. And it was so for me, cooking barbecue was it was a surprising experience, because I've never, if you put foie gras or bechamel or beurre blanc or something on a menu, sometimes people might hesitate and not know the proper way to pronounce it. And I've never met anybody that's afraid to pronounce barbecue. It's such an approachable food. It doesn't intimidate anybody. I always say that barbecue is like the most friendly food. It's the most gregarious cuisine. And so, I think it's just it's a modest food. And so here I was, this French trained chef, and barbecue was kicking my ass, and I was kind of surprised by it. But I fell in love with it. I was like, man, there's something that really that I'm connected to with taking lesser cuts of meat, tougher cuts of meat, less expensive cuts of meat. I always say these weren't the foods that maybe the kings and the queens got. They were getting the fillets and the ribeyes, but this was like the tough cuts. And so this whole process of learning how to cook something great out of these tough cuts of meat with simple ingredients and simple tools like a wood burning pit, I fell in love with it. And so I started making this barbecue, and we're cooking lots of meat, big weight. So I would take this food around to my neighbors because I had leftovers, and I would give it to them. So my neighbor, she's still my neighbor across the street, Sue Brown. I knock on her door, and I say, Sue, got some barbecue for you. And she'd say, thank you, Tuffy. And she'd take it. So I did that a few more times. And one day I knocked on her door, and I said, Miss Brown, I got some barbecue for you. And she goes, you know what, Tuffy, thanks, but I still got some of the last barbecue you made. and it struck me. My barbecue wasn't any good. And she didn't like it. And I had read this book by John Willingham. And John Willingham was a legendary Memphis MA cook and done so much for barbecue. And he had written this book. And in this book, he writes, I'm paraphrasing, but he writes, we're cooking, we're not smoking. Smoke is dirt. And that idea really just stuck with me. And I focused a lot on it. And I thought about clean fires, and I thought about somebody that back in the days before we had electricity or gas that had to maybe bake a cake with a wood burning oven. And I thought they probably know better than anybody the importance of clean smoke. And so I started to become really hyper focused on how to run a fire. And that's we could do a whole nother segment on your show just talking about my journey with learning how to run a clean fire and how I like to treat smoke like salt and pepper. I want the smoke to be a backdrop flavor of whatever it is that we're cooking. But I became really obsessed with this whole smoke thing and how to manipulate a fire and I got better at it over time, and my barbecue got better over time. But that's how I moved from like the French kitchen into this deep love for cooking with fire.
Nice. Yeah. So we had an episode, if I can't remember what number it was, but it was about the history of barbecue. But barbecue is that gathering and social type cooking. It's very awesome and fun. So obviously we've all made mistakes, like you overcooked your pork butts on your lings, but you learn throughout the process, and then you get familiar with your smokers as you go. And you're currently sitting on a pretty sweet Jambo right now, and you've had some rigs before that too. Can you tell us a little bit about your cooking setups?
Yeah, so it's so funny. So I had that Lang, and if I had it today, there's so many things that I know today that I didn't know then. But anyways, I found out about the KCBS. I found out about the Kansas City Barbecue Society, and I ended up signing up for this contest that was in my hometown, about 2.5 hours away from Richmond in Lynchburg, Virginia, where I grew up. And so I went down and I did this contest. And back then I was cooking at a lower temperature and I was putting my meat on a lot earlier. And so I'm in this contest, and it's down by the river, and it's cold. And so all the stick burners are up and all the pellet cookers are asleep. And I'm talking to these guys, first time I've ever done it, and they're all, friendly, as we all know, these barbecue folks are so friendly. And they start talking about this other cooker, and they go, "He's not even up yet. He hadn't even lit his pit yet." And I go, "Who?" And they go, "Johnny." And I go, "Johnny who?" And they go, "Johnny Trigg." And I go, "Who's Johnny Trigg?"
Oh.
And so they explained to me who Johnny Trigg is. Well, I've always been a curious person. So probably about 4:30, his light to his RV comes on, and he steps out to go light his fire. Well, I walk over there and I introduce myself, and that's the first time I've ever seen a Jambo. And I'm like, man, this is a beautiful pit. So we got to conversating, and he was going to sell me one of those Jambos. He said, "I'm going to cook the jack, and then you can get it after the jack," because this contest was in September. And so I stayed in touch with him, and then he decided he didn't want to sell that pit. Well, at that point, Jamie decided, and back then, Jamie was only building 2 pits in the winter, and that was it. So for the whole year, he built 2 pits in the winter. And so to get one of those 2 was really special. So he made that pit for me, and here's the good part about the story. So Jambos aren't cheap, right?
No,
not at all.
So I was convinced that I needed to get this Jambo. It's the prettiest pit I've ever seen. And anyways, so I put together. I'm a terrible typer. So Hunt and Tech, 2 fingers. I type out this business plan of what could potentially happen if I were to be able to get a Jambo. And so my wife came home from work one night, and I poured her a glass of red wine, and then I poured her a second, and then I pulled out this business plan, and I explained. I wish I still had this because but anyways, it had like these lofty dreams of maybe if I had a Jambo, maybe these things could happen. And what's crazy is that I would have never thought that this barbecue journey would have taken me the places that it's taken me. But anyway, she said I could get a Jambo. And so me and a friend flew to Texas and rented a truck and brought that Jambo back from Burleson. And that pit, my brother-in-law eventually called it the Grill Vet. And so I've been calling it the Grill Vet since 2005. We cooked a contest with our first contest we cooked with it was in Mobile, Alabama in 2005. And I've been calling that pit the Jambo ever since. And it's been that pit's been very good to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, first of all, your first contest, you're right. It's next to Johnny Trigg, and then he's willing to sell you a smoker. That's amazing, just right out the gate.
I know, right? Yeah. So we got 2 calls that day. I think we got like a 2nd place in pork and a 7th place in brisket, and Johnny won it, and he took all that Virginia money back to Texas.
So you start cooking with the Jambo, and you had a lot of success. I mean, you've been cooking with that thing since 2005, you said. I mean, you've come up winning, you won the Jack, right? 2016. Just recently winning the Memphis in May. Tell us about those 2 wins, especially the Memphis in May. Like, let's talk about that for a second. Your journey to winning that's like what everyone wants to win, right? And the Jack, and you've won them both. So tell us about how that went down and how that felt.
Oh my gosh. It's hard to really talk about it because it's hard to talk about the success and how it feels without coming across boastful.
Gosh, if I won the Jack, I wouldn't shut up about it.
No.
I'd tell everyone they didn't know what it was.
Well, see, the thing is the first time we won the Jack was in 2013. And so 2013, we went to the American. Let's see. Here's kind of like here's just a little dotted line of my competition circuit. So, first competition we did one was in 2004. 2005, we won our first grand that summer. 2007, we were fortunate enough to be KCBS Team of the Year. 2008, I think we made it to 3rd place at the Jack. 2010, I'm just trying to hit some of the highlights. 2010, we went to Memphis in May. I felt like it was, if I was going to be an accomplished competition cook, that I should compete in Memphis in May. So in 2010, we went to Memphis in May. Jamie Gear was on my team, my dad. Anyways, we went down there and we made finals in shoulders. And I don't know if y'all know much about Memphis in May and how it works, but basically you can either cook ribs, whole shoulders, or whole hog. And then they get what they call finals, and the top 3 then get to present to 4 final judges. And these 4 final judges judge the top 3 ribs, top 3 shoulders, top 3 whole hogs, and then they declare a winner, 3rd, 2nd, 1st in each category, and then an overall grand champion. So the first year that we cooked Memphis in May, we were fortunate enough, we made finals, which was very exciting. We were all crying with emotion. We did our finals presentation. We went to awards, and we ended up taking 1st place in shoulders. And then Melissa Cookston and Pete, they won whole hog, and then they won the whole contest. I think 2011, we were fortunate enough to be brisket cook of the year for KCBS. 2013, we go to the American Royal Invitational, and I think we get 3 calls. And we ended up winning the American Royal Invitational. And there wasn't one picture where I wasn't crying because one of my goals was to one day be invited to the American Royal Invitational. So to be there and win it was like, it was amazing. So 2 weeks later, we went to the Jack, and my wife was with us, and we had 3 calls at the Jack. And so we're sitting there, and they're calling the top 10 overall. And Johnny Trigg gets up, he's up front, and he starts walking back. And I know what he's doing because he's done this before. He'll congratulate somebody before they win, and then they don't win because he thinks they got it. So he had done this to me before. So I'm very superstitious. Anyways, they're calling the top 10. I see Johnny coming, and I get up and I walk away. Well, I can't even breathe. I've finished my bottle of water. I can't even breathe. My mouth is dry. And if I look up, everybody's looking at me as they're calling. And I said, there's no way we're winning the Jack after just winning the Invitational. And they go to call Grand, and they call Cool Smoke. So my wife comes and gets me, and she says, now don't cry, because there wasn't one picture of you know. So anyways, we did that. 2004, we won the American Royal Open, which was huge. And then 15 and 16, we won the Jack back-to-back, which was pretty amazing, because no one had ever won it back-to-back, and no one had ever won it 3 times. So it's a trippy, crazy. Even to tell the journey, it seems. I tell people all the time, with the most honest, if we never ever, if Cool Smoke never ever wins again, I believe that we've won more than our fair share. So, it's just very mind blowing. My mom, she put it into perspective when she was alive. One time we did a contest and we did really well, and then the next week we went to a contest and we never got a call. Here goes the nail one. We never got a call, and my mom called me up on the phone and she said, Tuffy, I hear you didn't do so well this weekend. And I said, no, ma'am. And she said, well, last weekend it was your turn, and this weekend it was somebody else's. And that really put into perspective for me, if it's the same person winning all the time, it would be really boring. And so this idea of sometimes we're going to get our asses handed to us and sometimes we'll do well, that just kind of helped me kind of keep a balance on it. But anyways, we've been blessed beyond blessed on the competition circuit. I've been able to do it with my dad, and he's so proud and so happy to have had these experiences. And of course, going down to Memphis in May this year was unbelievable. I mean, it's just you think that you're going to wake up and you're going to wake up from this dream, and so to wake up and it still happened, it's like it's crazy.
Yeah, that's a huge resume, extremely huge. And then meanwhile,
so dumb.
In between there too, you actually did the BBQ Pitmasters show in the mix with all that other stuff too.
Yeah. So anyways, I feel so embarrassed even telling you all that journey, because it's so ridiculous. The things that have happened to us. It's like to recap some of that journey just seems like most people didn't know me. My grandfather just beat into my head humbleness and humility, and so to talk out loud, it's just it's very uncomfortable for me. But BBQ Pitmasters. I met John Marcus through Competition Barbecue. And I was telling y'all earlier about my obsession when focused on learning how to run a good fire and manage smoke properly. And I was cooking at a contest one time by myself in Dillard, Georgia, a really wonderful contest that Steve and Jane put on. And my phone rang, and it was John Marcus, and he said, and this was like Friday night, he said, Tuffy, he said, I got this idea for a television show, and I would like to send a film guy, and I'd like to send 2 guys down to film you, because I'm going to put together this sizzle reel and try and sell this show. And I said, all right, you can do that. And he said, I got to tell you, I've cast your role as the professor. He said, Tuffy, you can talk. He said, you can talk for hours on smoke and wood and fire. And I was like, all right, you're right, and I can deal with that. Sometimes people want to put a stick on somebody, and it's usually something that doesn't suit well for me. But the professor and this obsession with how to cook with fire, I felt like it was appropriate. So that Monday, they went and they filmed Leanne Whippen, Wood Chicks. And she called me that night and she said, Tuffy, I got to apologize. I said, for what? She said, well, they wanted me to talk all this smack and I didn't know what to talk about. So I I started talking about you and your spreadsheets and all this kind of stuff. Anyways,
Oh, no.
so I stayed awake all night, like thinking, man, I'm not a trash talker. I'm not a smack talker. What am I gonna talk about? You know, I don't know. So I kind of sorted through it as I laid awake in bed, and I decided that I'd kind of be funny with my stuff. So some of the things that I came up with were, I don't know if it's true or not, but I hear Johnny's got a gun in his boot. I love Leanne, but I don't want to be cooked. I don't want to cook beside her because her hairdryer always knocks out my power. You know, Myron says he's a winningest man in barbecue, but I haven't seen any of those trophies yet. You know, just dumb stuff like that. But anyway, so I think it was like a week later. Next thing you know, the show went live, and off we went. I had a video guy and a producer and a production assistant actually travel with me in my RV all the way from Richmond, Virginia to Mesquite, Nevada, where we filmed our first episode. And I ended up doing, well, so I did season 1. I didn't do season 2. And then I ended up, after that, I think I did 5 seasons with Myron as a judge. And I've eaten more bad takeout food with Myron all over this country than you can imagine. So it was an amazing experience. It was who would have ever thought that just wanting to learn how to cook with wood would put you on a television show.
Yeah, and that we were talking to Harry Sue about that, and he was saying that it was like these crews traveled with you the whole time. Like they were all over the place, and that's probably why it was so. The first episode, which was the best barbecue, well, one of the best barbecue shows ever. That episode, right. It seemed like it, but almost impossible to continue just because it cost them so much money. Because you guys were all over the country.
Yeah, so the first one we did, I'll never forget. I think it was Brian Catalina was the showrunner, and he had done the world's deadliest catch. And when I was talking to him, and I was like, "How?" They filmed 153 hours for the first episode, and you got to whittle it down to like 40 some minutes. I'm like, "How do you do that?" And he says, "You just create a storyboard, and as you create the storyboard, it eliminates a lot of the tape." And they've got a real process for it. But yeah, it was, I made really dear friends through that process. And, it was an amazing trip.
Yeah, it was I binge watched every single one of those. Well, it was funny because of, I got into, you plant seeds, and when I'm from Utah, and Mesquite's very close to us. And I was in Las Vegas, and I was driving up, and I saw that there was a barbecue competition going on, and that was that one you guys filmed. And I drove by going, that would be so cool. And then seed planted, and here I am. So it was interesting.
I tell you what, it's a slippery slope, this barbecue. I mean, look, y'all got your show now. It all starts with, just a modest little grill in the backyard, overcooking some chicken. And next thing you know, you don't know where it's going to lead you. And the people, the friends that you make through it, that's the amazing part. How many people you get to become friends with all over the place through barbecue and cooking with fire.
And so, and like you said, you started out, just wanting to do barbecue, and now you're a Hall of Famer. I mean, talk about that Hall of Fame. Yeah. That's crazy. Like, you got Memphis and you got all that stuff, right? Yeah. But now you're cemented in time.
It's like, I don't think about this stuff until like I'm having a conversation like this, and it's just some of this stuff is just surreal. It's like when I got that. Here's a little funny story about the Hall of Fame. I was doing a book signing in Memphis, Tennessee, and hardly anybody was there, and I was sitting there feeling sorry for myself and feeling kind of lame, and the phone rang, and I looked at it, and there was a Kansas City number, and I didn't know it, and I wasn't going to pick up, but I was like, there's no one here. Let me just pick. And that was the phone call that informed me that I was being inducted into the Hall of Fame. And if you don't know by now, I'm an emotional guy. So here I was sitting in, I was actually in Silky Sullivan's and right in Memphis doing this book signing, and all of a sudden I got that phone call and I just kind of got choked up. I was like, my gosh, the Hall of Fame. There's so many people that I don't know. There's so many. I've watched so many of my friends, Johnny Trigg, Myron Mixon, Pat Burke, many of my good friends get inducted in the Hall of Fame, and there's so many that need to be in the Hall of Fame. And so to have them, bring me in for that, it was very, very touched and blown away.
That would be, I get this picture now. You're at this book signing. Not a lot of people are there. You get the call and you're just kind of like choking up, and people are like, oh, we should go get a book signed from him.
That's it. That was pretty much it.
No, I'm actually really happy.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, and there's not a lot of people in that Hall of Fame either. I mean, that's an elite group. That's an elite group right now.
Yeah. I feel very honored and touched to be included into that, and it's there's a lot of people that need to be. There's some people out there that have done so much for barbecue, so it's going to be great to see this list just grow and get these people that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame Anyways, it's very special.
I bet. Yeah. But then the Hall of Fame. But for me, you met Dave Grohl, so that tops it all. So I grew up. I was the world's biggest Nirvana fan. I mean, I was absolutely that guy. You see those people in the Beatles fan. The chick, the girls are like, what, screaming and passing out. If I met Dave Grohl, I would do exactly that.
Or Drew Brees.
Yeah, Drew Brees. But tell us about. So Dave Grohl, there was at Memphis, if I'm not right. Wasn't that not?
Yeah. That was this past Memphis in May. I'm at my site, and we've done our turn-ins and we made finals. We didn't know where we were going to land, and it's so funny because somebody that put a lot of energy and effort into, communicating to people that she felt like I should be in the Hall of Fame was Melissa Cookston. And she's a dear friend of mine, and I love her to death. And she had done so much. She's done so much to support me. And I turn on my site, and there's Melissa. And I say, hey, Melissa. And she goes, I got somebody that wants to meet you. And I say, okay. And I look to the side, and it's Dave. I'm like, oh my God. I said, sorry for geeking out right now, but I can't believe you're in my tent. Oh my God. And so he and the whole thing, gang came in, and we fed them barbecue and beers. And Dave is a big barbecue fanatic and loves to cook. And so I gave the tour of, I had my double barrel Jambo down there, and they probably spent, I don't know, an hour with us, and it was awesome.
How is he? Like, I mean, he was he there competing? Because he does compete.
Yeah, but no, he is such a laid back dude. I think he was raised in Virginia, but he's just such an amazing guy, and just so nice, just way laid back, and I can't imagine what it's like to be him and to try and get anywhere, peacefully. I mean, he's probably just mobbed everywhere, and all these people have gathered around our site from the outside and were like checking it out. He just handles it all in stride, but he is just you can't see my face right now, but my face is just hurting from smiling because he is just such an awesome dude.
That's awesome.
I bet.
Yeah. So with all your emotional stuff that you got going on and wiping your tears away at your book signing, let's talk about that book.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I want to kind of touch on a couple things on this book real quick, though.
All right.
I want to point out some specifics of this that helped me a ton. And I want to make sure this gets said because this changed my whole outlook on barbecue was reading this book. And you bring up a couple of things. And I've brought it up on the podcast and I've credited you, but I want to talk to you about it. Cold food. is, you serve, you want, not I don't know, cold, but you want to wait a certain amount of time before your food gets turned in for a competition, because that's what the judges are going to taste. They're going to taste that flavor profile. And it's going to be different than it is when it comes off of the pit. So, and here's
what I try to teach. I try to teach that your food needs to eat well cold, because when we cook our food and we put it in the box, by the time we turn it in, the time it gets sorted out and it gets to the judging table, and then they pass all those boxes around, and everybody judges it for appearance, and then they get their portions, and then they start judging it. Your food goes from warm to room temperature pretty quick. And so what we need to do is what I teach in my class is when you turn in and you get back to your site, judge some of the food that's still on your cutting board and chew that. Try a rib, try a brisket. Because as barbecue, when we're cooking these meats for a long time and trying to break down this connective tissue and these collagens and render this meat to tender, if it doesn't break down enough, when it chills, that meat's going to be a whole lot tougher than it was when it was warm. So what we need to do is we need to evaluate that texture based on what that chew is like when it's cooled down a bit. And a lot of times we might find that our ribs tighten up and they're too tight, or our brisket is too tight when it cools. So the best way to really, you've got to make sure that your meat will still have a nice gentle chew once it's cool.
And then you also told that story about your mom, which was really helpful to me. I was always getting so nervous and just so worked up. People were like, don't worry about it, and then I read that and I was like, oh, okay. It's just not my time. It's just not my day.
Yeah.
It was a mentality. It was like, you got to put yourself in a mentality. You can't just think you can go out and win them all, and
so mentality and mindset to me is so important. So like if I turn in chicken and I'm disappointed in my chicken for whatever reason, when I walk back to start working on ribs, in my mind, I'm like, I am going to make it up in ribs. And I keep that mindset all the way through closing the lid on brisket. I am going to make up for whatever my shortcoming was on the dish, on the next dish. Oh man, look at the whole pot. I got so many mindsets and philosophies, and I could spend a long time just talking about competition barbecue and my approach and mindset. It's so much for me mental.
And that's what I'm saying, is I would just get so anxiety ridden, and it is so true. And literally ever since then, I've had so much more fun, just because I'm able to, put myself in a position where, like, okay, you know what, that's in. There's nothing we can do about it. We're on. It's like the Bill Belichick thing. We're on to ribs. We're on to Cleveland.
Right.
So it's like you got to move on, and you got to cut it off, and it is what it is then. But you also talk about contests being a tenderness contest, and that's what it all boils down to. So talk about on that.
Yeah, well, and I think part of that for me was the realization when I judged so much in BBQ Pitmasters. Usually the food that stood out the best was the one that had the best texture. I can fix taste. I can give a little pop of dust or a little adjustment on seasoning if it needs a little pick-me-up on flavor. But tenderness and getting that perfect chew usually makes food remarkable. You think about it. I don't care if it's a cookie or a salad, or toast or whatever. The foods that are usually most remarkable in any type of cuisine, whether it be high end or just simple food, are the foods with the best texture. I don't care if it's mac and cheese, ice cream, whatever it is. With lettuce, you want it crispy. With a Caesar salad, let's just talk about Caesar salad. Mm-hmm. We want the right amount of dressing on there. We don't want too much. That's mouthfeel. It's flavor too, but it's mouthfeel. And we want that crunchy, crisp romaine. We want the croutons to not be stale. There's so much about texture. So learning to get that sweet spot on texture, that's really important. Now let's talk. So when I first started cooking chicken in competition barbecue, actually I'd been cooking chicken for a while in competition barbecue, and I was cooking chicken the way I liked it. And one day my dad was eating chicken. He said, I like our chicken. He said, I just wish it was cooked a little bit more. And it was like a light bulb went off for me. I was like, you know what? I don't know who these judges are, and they might not like their chicken done the same way I do. Chicken specifically. So I started cooking my chicken more done than as a chef I would prefer to have it done. But anyways, just that texture and how that texture is once it's cool is what the judges are probably going to get.
And what temperature do you take your chicken up to? Just curious.
Hold on one second. My friend's going to ask me a question.
I bet he doesn't take it to 202.
I hope so. I didn't want to send this off to Ron.
All right, I'm back. It's usually so some people are cooking their chicken over 200 degrees, which for me, if I cook my chicken over 200 degrees, it's dry. But a lot of people are cooking their chicken in a pan and covering it with foil. But for me, my sweet spot's usually around 185, 187.
Yeah. So let's get back into the book then. I just wanted to know, because I'm kind of in this moment now where I'm experimenting with chicken temperatures. So let's talk about that book. So where did that book come about? Because I love that thing. Like I told you before, I pre-ordered it. I read it from cover. I've cooked out of it a lot. Awesome resource, great rubs. So a lot of people out there have a lot of that stuff, and the way you do rubs too. I like the fact, cause you're chef, so you like to cook off some of your stuff in pans and toast them, which gives them a good aromatic flavor and stuff like that. But I digress. But tell us about that book and how that came about.
So, it was like I had, so much good fortune in my life with barbecue, and it was like, all right, I really need to do a cookbook. I want to do a cookbook. I should do a cookbook. And the process was taking longer, and every time I turn around, 2 or 3 of my other buddies had a cookbook, and I'm like, man, I got to do a cookbook. And so anyways, Janice Shea, I worked with her, and she had 3 different publishers make offers to me to do a cookbook. And so I sorted through all that, and I ended up working with St. Martin's Press out of New York. And so I went from, oh man, I need to do a cookbook, I want to do a cookbook, to I have to do a cookbook. I signed a contract. So, so I worked really hard. A really great chef that had worked with me, that I had to close a restaurant, and she was a chef at Danielle Goodrow. I felt so bad we had to close this restaurant. I was like, well, you want to help me do a cookbook? And so she helped me with this process. And so when I was trying to decide, well, what's my cookbook going to be? Because all my friends, there's so many of my friends have done some really amazing cookbooks. What am I going to write and that's going to complement those and be a nice addition to the population of cookbooks that's already out there. And so this was like, well, wait a minute, maybe it's time to get back to my roots. And so I kind of took a lot of my culinary ideas from when I first started cooking with Chef Alon, my deep thoughts on cooking with fire. I felt like I had to share about competition barbecue, but at the same time, I feel like we're all so busy in this day and age that we don't have time to cook a pork butt or brisket or a rack of ribs every day, but we can fire up the grill every day. So I wanted to have include a lot of grilled dishes. I think side dishes in the world of barbecue often don't get the love, and so side dishes is really important to me. Seasons is important to me. Textures is really important to me. I tried to bring in, I might use spiced pecans or spiced walnuts for textural crunch, and I like to create dishes that sometimes some barbecue can be a little heavy and a little rich, and so let's bring in a dish that's bright and acidic to make it a little more refreshing. Desserts I've done a lot of dessert work as a cook in my years of cooking, and so I tried to think about desserts from a seasonal standpoint, and also thinking about it being a nice finish to a grilled item. And then I really wanted to talk about I wanted to try and convey how I cook and how I cook with fire and how I think about smoke and think about the smart, sauce, for example. I think we can all relate to probably having chicken off the grill one time where the chicken was raw and the sauce was burned. And so I want a sauce for me is always cook the meat until it's done and then sauce. So it's always a finished step for me, sauce at the end. And, anyways, I tried to convey all the nuggets of things that are really important to me and how I cook. I've tested recipes a whole lot because one of my first cookbooks that I got had a lemon pound cake recipe in there, and I made it 3 times, and every time it went out of the pan, the same size they had said to use, and it went all over my oven, and I had to clean out my oven. And I finally realized it wasn't me, it was the recipe. And so I didn't want to do that to people. So I did a lot of testing, and, it's so funny. So I was proofing. I was down to my final edits. I couldn't make any more edits. And I kept finding stuff. And I was like, I talk about this Smoke is Dirt, from John Willingham. I said, well, let me go get his, actually, I thought it was somebody else that had written it. So I went and got that book. And I was like, man, it's not in here. It was because there was 2 books that really inspired me when I first started doing this barbecue thing. And one of them was John's and one of them was Smoky Hale. And I, for some reason, thought Smoky Hale had said it. So I had gotten Smoky Hale's book out and it wasn't in there anywhere. And so then I finally realized, wait a minute, it's John Willingham. And I was able to fix it in the end. But anyways, it was a lot of work, a whole lot of effort. I didn't, this was, it wasn't no ghostwriter. It was, and it was a lot. It was a real dedicated time, a lot of time of making these foods. You talk about toasting, whether it be coriander or cumin but toasting spices and then grinding them fresh. I grind everything fresh. The difference between grinding spices and making a rub versus buying pre-ground, the flavor just leaps off the plate. It's so much better, and you know that as a chef, how much better it is. But that's what I did with my rubs.
And the rubs, you actually sell those now. So the rubs and sauces.
So I have 2 rubs and 2. I have 2 rubs and 2 sauces, and Old World Spice is my distributor, and I'm excited to be working with them. And I'm looking to bring 2 more rubs and 1 more sauce, so that we'll have 3 sauces and 4 rubs. And that's been a lot of fun too, and been having fun with packaging. And I'm in the process of reworking some brand stuff. So I'm working with a really great person, Libby Summers now. Libby art directed my cookbook, and she's helping me with a bunch of things now. She's so amazingly talented, and anyways, we're working on some fun stuff together. So I got hopefully new websites coming out this year, and some new logos, and some new products, and just keep trying to have fun.
Nice. So I'm the type of person, Rusty, like cooking out of the cookbook is awesome and fun, but when it comes to sauces and rubs, I just rather have it packaged and ready to go so I can do a test run of like 5 different flavors. And with him coming out with his new stuff, it's makes life a lot easier, I promise. On my end anyways. But yeah, so speaking of the sauces and rubs, apparently we can learn how to use those on February 21st and 22nd, right?
Yeah, I'm going down to Mark Lambert's, and excited. He reached out to me and said, hey, you want to teach a class in Mississippi? And I said, hell yeah. I had disassembled my cook school, and because we're going to turn that into a new business. And then, of course, that process has taken longer. So I had a really nice facility to teach classes. And then I demoed it. So unfortunately, I don't have that in Richmond right now, but I'm excited to be going down. And Mark is a hell of a guy and a good buddy and a good barbecue guy. We've got lots of mutual interests. We like to duck hunt. We like to fish. So it's going to be fun.
So is that competition style food, or are you going to do a little bit of what's the school?
It'll be straight up what I do in competition.
Okay. Then definitely going to that one then. Memphis.
Yeah, and you taught classes in
Mississippi.
Yeah, you taught some classes in Sweden and Brazil.
Yeah, I've taught classes in Australia, New Zealand, Sweden, Brazil, and the Netherlands.
Yeah.
So it's been,
speaking of the Brazil one, let's talk about the you had to pretty much teach the class in Portuguese. Well, you didn't, but
yeah. So so I hope that he was interpreting right, but it was fun. He interpreted really well, word for word, and we had a little banter going back and forth. It was I make a lot of noises and when I teach, sound effects with like shaking and he would imitate that. So it was great. But Brazil, they're really passionate group of people. They're really enjoying American barbecue. It was cool. They play BBQ Pitmasters in Brazil. And so I got to visit a really great family that's had a pit building company for 5 years, and they're building, I think, 30 or 40 pits a month. And they got inspired to start that by watching BBQ Pitmasters. And so when I got there, they were crying with emotion. They were so happy to see me there. It was really sweet. Daniel that brought me over was fabulous. He just opened up a new restaurant. But they just really kind people, and it was really amazing. I think I'll go back this year. They're just incredible.
So you're kind of like the Dave Grohl of barbecue, really, if you think about it then.
Yeah. Rusty would cry if he's seen you, maybe.
Yeah, I would. Actually, hi. I'm interesting. So you've cooked a lot all over the place, but you, as a former Marine, and thank you for your service, by the way.
Thank you.
You've cooked for the troops. Tell us about that in Kuwait. And
so this is another John Marcus story. He had this. He called me up and asked me if I wanted to go to Kuwait and cook for the troops, and it was going to be part of a USO tour. And I said, absolutely, just tell me when. And that was quite a endeavor. Old Hickory built 2 big pits, and Head Country donated stuff, and getting all that product over there was a lot of work. And so Johnny Trigg, Nicole Davenport, Jamie Gear, Myron Johnny, Nicole, Jamie, and myself, and John Marcus with some camera guys went over there, and we cooked. First base we cooked was for like 2,000 to 2,500 troops, and then the next base was like 3,000. It was amazing. It's a dry country, so no liquor or beer for any of us. And we went over there. It was hot. And the first time we cooked, the electric was different, so the pits weren't operating right. And so me and Johnny and John Marcus stayed up all night, kind of limping these pits along, and finally got that meat to start to cook. And I used to love to run in formation and sing cadence, and so the sun was coming up, and this platoon was running, and they were we couldn't see them, but as they were getting closer, their cadence was getting louder. And so as they finally came around the corner, this place was starting to smell like barbecue. And I was watching them, and as they got closer, and all of a sudden that smell of barbecue hit them. You could just see all their faces light up. But the best story was the second base that we cooked at. I was really, really tired, and we had fed the last soldiers, and I was taking my apron off, and I was walking down this hall, and I was just kind of just exhausted. And there was a couple of Army guys that were in these like old-fashioned chairs with like the desk attached to it, and they were just kind of like, legs out, eyes slightly closed, looking like they were sated from eating this meal. And I said, was everything all right? And one of them said, yeah. He said, I closed my eyes, and for a second I felt like I was at home. And I was like, that's all I needed. That was why I was there. So that was pretty cool.
Wow.
Well, yeah, that's crazy. Well, speaking not at home, you sent your son off to college this year, huh?
Yeah.
What's that like?
If you only have one, it's hard. So my wife and I have worked hard together for a long time, and we finally realized, man, if we're going to have a family, we better start. So Sam is 19, and he started off at East Carolina, but he switched after the first semester to Tennessee in Knoxville. And he seems to be very happy down there. And so I drove him down and got him all set up. And he's got two of his childhood buddies with him, and he's digging it. So as a dad, for you to have your son happy at college is a good thing.
And as a dad, like I grew up, I got into barbecue when I was a young kid because my family would hunt, and they'd hunt deer and elk and you name it. And the best way to cook all those things is smoking it.
Yeah.
And so growing up with my dad and then out smoking with my grandpa, and it was like the cool kids club, right? And I wasn't invited to the cool kids club because whatever, I'd ruin something, I guess. But you actually cook with your dad now as a competition cook, and that for me is ultimate. My dad's just like, no, he didn't want to. I actually asked him, but he didn't want to. So tell us about cooking with your dad.
Oh, my dad will tell you. He said it many times. He feels like he's the luckiest dad in the world. That highlight reel of some of the things that we've had happen to us in competition barbecue, Dad was there with every one of them. And so we got a lot of miles and travel together, cooking all over the country. And he's just, I think this is probably one of the most special things that's happened in his life and in my life, and to be able to do it together is just, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, that for me would be probably the best thing, but he won't leave his house. So I don't know. I can't get him to do it. But hey, man, we appreciate your time coming on. I mean, for us, like I said, we were excited to have you on because you're one of our inspirations, and your success and your book and your shows. And I mean, gosh, we can go on and on. Just the stuff you've done has been truly inspiring to people like us who do barbecue, competition barbecue, and and we kind of leech off of who we can, and you're probably one of the best to do that. Yep. So we appreciate you taking the time to look, to help us and everyone else listening through,
Well,
barbecue.
Guys, I appreciate y'all inviting me onto the show, and it's been really enjoyable for me, and let's do it again maybe we'll do it on a more concentrated subject next time, and make it a little. I get windy. You can tell I get windy.
Yeah, I could listen to it all day long. No, we'll do a 16-parter.
Yeah, do a 16-parter.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm down with that.
We'll be like the Fast and the Furious series with Tuffy Stone.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Hey, before we let you go, just real quick, where can people find you? Follow you and doing all that good stuff, the social stuff.
I think everything's at Tuffy Stone. So I think it's just I think it's at Tuffy Stone for Instagram, and at Tuffy Stone for Facebook. And I don't tweet much. Every now and then I do it. But and then if you're in Richmond, if you just come by the Westover, it seems like I'm here a whole lot. So unless I'm out there traveling, doing work in my barbecue life, I'm over here making food.
Yeah, we'll make sure that we know when you're cooking ribs, and we'll come by. Yep. And we'll get one of the handouts.
Come on. Utah's not that far.
No, it's not. It's not. All right, Tuffy, we appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
All right, appreciate y'all. Thank you.
All right, guys, that was our interview with Tuffy Stone. We had, Anthony has been trying to get him on the podcast for a while, and so finally getting that done was something cool, something we've always wanted to do. So
down to earth dude.
Yeah. And his book, guys, for real is really good. I've read it. I have cooked out of it several times. The stuff that he does in there is really genuine. I didn't know about his class until this. So I'm going to, who wants to go down to Mississippi? Was it Mississippi?
Something like that. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to go to Mississippi with me, let me know, because I'm probably going to go to that.
But, man, you have a lot of classes. You had some with Harry Sue, and
I knew Harry Sue. Harry Sue, sorry.
and then Tuffy's, and yeah.
Yeah, that's you're right. I do. I have a problem. I think
Yeah.
I need to work out. Okay. I'm going to limit myself to only one class a year.
No, don't do that.
I know. Well, guys, that wraps up another episode, and you can find us on Instagram at the Pitmasters Podcast, on Facebook for the same name. You can find us mostly on the pitmasterspodcast.com, where you can find all the things: gear, podcast, YouTube.
Any events that we coming up?
Any events we got going on. If you want
that.
to see my pretty face, if you see Anthony's pretty face, you can find it all there. And we do appreciate you guys so much for listening, and we hope you got a lot out of that.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, guys.
All right, thanks.
Have a good day.